They came without warning, a never-ending tide of the undead. Civilizations fell screaming beneath decaying claws and the chorus of hungry moans. But in the wake of the Great Panic, we stayed, we survived, and we're gonna take back our home, one day at a time, in Syracuse. Mouthwash by Tallon J. Larham. Do you know the only thing that smells worse than the undead? Untreated halitosis. Yeah, I'm serious. Just think about it. All those people crammed into Syracuse Central like cattle, everyone scrambling to meet their chore quota, getting ready to cash in their ration tokens, or worse, just sitting there, rocking back and forth, muttering to themselves. 1,000 so-called survivors penned in a singular location, and only a handful of them have seen the business end of a toothbrush in the past 6 months. Let me tell you something. Scraping the dried crap off your teeth with whatever you can find is about as effective as trying to clear a foot of central New York snow from the sidewalk by breathing really hard. I know it sounds like a small price to pay for surviving the plague, the hordes of undead coming through the state, and the chaos of people going loony with the craziness of it all. But I just can't stand the stink anymore. Zombie wants to eat my brains? No sweat. Give me a blunt object and room to swing, and I'll be fine. Looters want to break into Syracuse Central and steal our food? Just point the core at them and stand back. Everything will work itself out in the end. Force me to have an extended conversation with someone with rancid, rotten meat breath, and I'm no better than one of the weepers who snapped when they saw Zach coming. I first noticed the stench on a patrol. The corpse corps made the sweeps, push into an area, clear out Zach, then flag the area for gathering crews. Nowadays, we look more for scrap than tools or food. It really brings into contrast how pathetic this place has become. That day, the streets were barren, with a few staggering exceptions. We solved those issues as they arose, one bullet at a time. Just past midday, we found some piles of scrap iron metal layered up between a pair of dilapidated shops, their shattered glass windows still advertising the remnants of an Irish bargain party in peeling green paint. Somehow, I don't think the luck of the Irish applies anymore, Tina said wryly. No one laughed. But then again, I don't think Tina intended to be funny. She hefted her rifle and spat in disgust. Tina had been a kindergarten teacher before the plague, all chipper with her hugs, dresses, and holiday-themed sweaters. Now she wore the jackets and fatigues of the Corps. She traded in her chalk for something with a little more kick of the bolt-action variety. No one teased her about this. No one teased her about anything. That woman had a hardcore attitude and the firearm to back it up. Chuck and I guarded the rumbler while Peter and Tina started checking the pile of scrap. The metal ground harsh in the empty streets, louder than the ghosts of children playing on the corner. The noise was sure to draw some undead from the shadows, so Chuck and I started circling the rumbler, looking for the awkward, stumbling figures in the harsh summer sunlight. The zombie count had been low for the past few weeks, though never much lower than guarded on the grayscale. 1 zombie for every 100 citizens. We weren't expecting much. It's funny that even after all that time, we could still be caught off guard. Chuck and I were drawn to the sound of something coming from between the burned husk of a pair of houses. It's not the kind of sound you can mistake for anything else. That dry, gagging groan still makes my blood shiver. The figure that slumped into view had been some kind of clerk from the looks of him. He still wore a name tag on a tattered short-sleeved dress shirt. It came down the street spasmodically, its limbs dragging and knock-kneed. Even from 200 feet you could see the hands clawing in our direction, eager for living flesh. Its eyes were sunk so far into its head that you could barely see the white film. The ghoul never got within 100 feet. Chuck called out dibs faster than I could. The shot followed shortly, and I watched Zach's head explode like a dry balloon filled with ash and dust. The body shuddered for about 4 seconds before the muscles finally gave out, and the corpse collapsed for the last time. Requiescat in pace, Chuck was fond of that phrase. I thought it was distinctly morbid type of humor. We jumped as Tina dropped a heavy steel pipe into the back of the rumbler. She sneered at us in a way that would make anyone want to crawl under a rock. Ladies, if you're quite done... She hefted her rifle and backed away from the truck, circling her free hand. There's a lookout to be kept? Yeah. I shrugged and started my rounds again. Tina watched for a few seconds before we heard the crash of metal from between the stores, followed by Peter's swearing. Tina spun toward the shop, and Chuck came round from the other side of the rumbler to check everything out. The pile of scrap had been put up as a barrier. That much was easy to see. Makeshift walls were common after the first waves. People tried holing up in case the whole Z-word thing would ever blow over. It never did. Peter happened to be pulling on a piece of steel pipe when he upended the whole darn thing. About 400 pounds of metal came tumbling down on top of him, burying his large frame from the torso down in a rusty steel death trap. "I'm all right," he called, his voice echoing long between the buildings. He was pinned face down, so all he could do was lift his head to look at us. For a split second, he looked hilarious. Even Tina almost started laughing. Almost. Then she noticed the shape turning the corner further down the alley. The moan, the gleam of pale, hungry eyes, and the stink of rotting meat. Peter saw the look in Tina's eyes, and his face went pale. "Oh, God," he said. There was more than one. Tina charged the alley with her rifle already lifted to her shoulder. The bullet caught the first zombie in the eye and sent it spinning down in front of the others. They didn't pause over their fallen. They just kept pushing forward. Chuck ran to the driver's side and threw himself into the seat, twisting the key and sending the rumbler roaring to life. "Tina!" I shouted, running forward with my own rifle raised. Another shot, another zombie down. Tina started pulling on Peter frantically, tearing her fingers open as she clawed at the rusty metal. Peter fought to twist around, his hands fumbling for the pistol at his hip. I kept firing, sliding into that easy trance that comes when you're taking down zombies. Aim, fire, bolt. Aim, fire, rinse and repeat. The fear was twisting in my gut as I realized that a whole pack was staggering into view from the distant dusty corner. "Come on!" Chuck shouted from the driver's seat. I tried to help Tina, but the metal was too twisted and rusted to be cleared. Pulling on Peter only seemed to wedge him tighter. Tina paused to drop a few advancing zombies before stooping to pull again on the rusty steel. She quickly devolved into hysterics, the dust on her face rinsed away in twisting rivulets from the corners of her eyes. The pack was closer now, 30 feet max. The smell was terrible, a choking, gut-stabbing stench that made me dry heave right there. "Guys, now!" Chuck called one more time. Tina. This time it was Peter talking. I stood again to fire at the advancing undead. I knew what he was going to say, but Tina was the one who needed to hear it. "Don't you even think about it," she warned. But Peter didn't listen. 20 feet away, you could see their jagged, rotting teeth gnashing gleefully at the air. "You need to go," he grunted, and finally got his pistol out from the holster. No, she sobbed. I'd never seen Tina sob. I don't think anyone ever had. 15 feet. The stink was worse now. There were at least 100 of them, all surging forward with eager hands and slack mouths. "Get out of here, man." Peter was talking to me this time. I didn't need an excuse. "Sorry," I said to him lamely, and I grabbed Tina by the arm. She fought me weakly, but I was able to pull her back from the alley. Peter tossed the clip from his empty pistol at me. "I kept one. Now go." Tina wailed as I dragged her to the idling rumbler. No sooner had I dragged the door shut than Chuck peeled away in a sudden cloud of smoking rubber. We didn't look back, but we heard the single, lonely gunshot.